Hello, good evening or good late afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Today, we will be talking about understanding and navigating the in-home supportive services, which to a lot of you might be familiar as IHSS. It's a program that provides supports to some people who might have disabilities, and we're going to go into a lot of specifics about that. My name is Ireda Galden. I work for the Westside Regional Center, and I'm part of the Westside Family Resource and Empowerment Center. And this training disclaimer is usually a little bit longer, but you can ask for your handout from Club 21, and they would be more than happy to share it with you. So we're going to start for the sake of time. These are some of the items we'll be covering today: the overview of the IHSS program, preparing to apply, getting organized, applying, what to expect at that home visit, the notice of action, which is also called NOA, appeals and hearings, some helpful resources, and I'm not going to talk too much about the changes due to IHSS due to COVID, but you'll have that on the slides, and we always ask parents to please, call and see what updated information there is, because COVID is always changing. So what is IHSS? The In-Home Supportive Service IHSS program will help you pay for services to allow older adults and individuals with disabilities who need assistance to receive non-medical care in their home if they cannot otherwise remain safely at home. Okay. And so basically this allows us to keep our families at home. It's a really cost-efficient program. And it was initially done for our elderly and then expanded to people with disabilities of all ages. So who is eligible for IHSS? To qualify for IHSS, you must be 65 years old or older, blind and or disabled as defined by the Social Security Administration standards. Disabled children are also potentially eligible for IHSS. You must be a citizen of the US or qualified alien, be a resident of California, although they do have this program in other states, but it might be called differently and their protocol might be different. You must live in your own home, and that could be your house, your apartment, even a motel or hotel. And you must be determined eligible for Medi-Cal. So anybody applying for this program must have some type of Medi-Cal. There is no age limit to apply for IHSS. However, the younger the child is, the more you must be able to justify the needs of a disabled applicant versus that of a non-disabled child of similar age. So obviously, the younger the children are, the little bit harder or challenging might be for you to justify those needs. Because if we compare a 3-year-old that has special needs to a typical 3-year-old, they still all need 24-hour care. They still all need support with their daily life skills. They might all still need feeding. Not all typical 3-year-olds are potty trained. So how do you justify that difference? And there's many ways you can do that. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. These are the different types of services that IHSS provides, and we like to discuss them in our handout because they're not always mentioned to you. So domestic and related services is one of them, non-medical personal care services, accompaniment services, yard hazard abatement, protective supervision, paramedical, and teaching and demonstrating. And through a series of evaluations performed by the county social worker, IHSS recipients can be authorized for 283 hours of service a month. Now, that may sound like a lot of hours for some of you folks that are not getting anything, but for some folks like myself that has a son who's 24-hour care, very medically frail, if you think about it, usual months have about 730 hours per month. So if you're giving me 283 hours a month and you're saying you're generous, I'm still having to figure out how to supplement the rest of the month worth of hours. And I like to share this tip because oftentimes, parents are granted hours and they're okay with it because they weren't receiving anything before, but really think about the situation in your home and your child's need, and don't be afraid to, not be in agreement if that's the case. And we'll talk about that shortly as well. So who's the one who provides the service? An IHSS provider is someone paid to provide services to an IHSS recipient. Recipients may hire anyone who meets the IHSS provider enrollment requirements and can meet their needs. It could be a family member, a friend, or someone referred from the Public Authority Registry. And this registry is through PASC. It's a nonprofit. We have their contact information in this PowerPoint for you. And it's a list of people who have already gone through orientation, maybe have experience working with IHSS and are looking to either get a job or get more hours. Now, I want to let you know that provider and recipient are very common words that you'll hear when you start applying for IHSS or when you're in the program. Provider is a person providing the services. Recipient is a person receiving the service. So whenever it says provider signs here, recipient signs here, that's what it means. Okay. So you want to prepare yourself to apply. What will make your case stronger and give justification to your request is gathering information or documents that may support your application, especially for those kids that are younger that we talked about earlier, or kids who maybe visually don't look like they have a lot of needs going on, or we have kids who have really good days and then really bad days. And so you want to really show what it's like, not on just the day they come, but, on a daily situation with the family. We were recommending to preferably share documents that were no older than 2 years old, preferably 1 year old. But right now with COVID, I know parents want to demonstrate what it is like when the kids were going to school. What kind of services and supports did they need to be able to, fully access their curriculum or fully be safe in that environment? And so right now, I think it's okay and appropriate for you to use those older documents if you have to. Okay. We always encourage you to make copies of any documents that you deemed are going to be supportive. Don't turn in your originals. This agency is very overwhelmed. They have a lot of cases continuously. I believe each social worker might have about 400 cases. So it's very easy for them not to get stuff on time or lose it. So it's easier for us as parents to make sure we have our copy so that if they don't get it, we can resend it to them. And here's a list of all the documents that some of our parents have used in the past to help their families justify some of those needs that they're talking about. For example, incident reports, and we gave you a list of different things parents have used in the past. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through every one of these, but if you have questions, please email me with any questions you may have. Evaluations and assessments are something that's also very useful. And if you think about it, if your child attends special education, they should have a triannual psychological assessment done every 3 years. And that usually talks about all the needs this child's gonna have, all the services this child needs, recommendations and stuff like that. So those are really good documents. The other thing some of our families have used is the IFSP, which is the Individualized Family Service Plan. And that's for regional center clients that are birth to 3. And then if your kid is over 3 and they're still a regional center client, you can use the IPP, which is the Individualized Program Plan. And the other document that's also very supportive is the IEP, because the IEP is going to talk about goals, related services, accommodations and modifications, any supports that they may need, like an aid or any like behavior plans that might be, addressed. So all those things really paint a nice picture of what your child needs in terms of needing it in another environment, not just your home. So it's going to say, well, what mom's saying is also happening in other environments. Other things are therapeutic reports, and these are really helpful for the little ones. So remember we said, how can you justify those little ones' needs when basically life skills, needs are kind of the same when it comes to typical and kids that are 3 and under. It is for some families, but not for all families. For some families, dressing, feeding can be very challenging if there's behavior concerns, if there's speech delays, if there's sensory issues. Feeding time and prepping meals might look different if there's a special diet plan going on. And so these reports are going to help justify that need is there. Okay. Other things are medical history, information about the diagnosis. We don't want them to leave our house assuming that your kid who might have autism or Down syndrome is also going to have the exact same challenges that the other child in their caseload has. No, everybody has different challenges that they deal with. And so we want to make sure that they know what those challenges are for our own son or daughter, especially if there's other like a rare diagnosis, or if there's other diagnosis. So let's say if your child has Down syndrome, but also suffering depression or medical issues, then that adds a layer of even more supports or challenges when you're supporting that child. So these are all things you really want to share with that person coming into the home. You really, like I said, you really want to not have them leave assuming. You want to paint that picture of what it looks like to support your loved one. A list of medications is also helpful, and they actually ask for it. So some of these things are optional for you to share. Some of them might be requested by them. Parents have also used letters of support, okay, maybe from social workers, caregivers, and there's a list right there. And some parents have actually even used pictures and videos. We obviously tell parents, if your kid is climbing that fence and you're the only one who can go grab them, we don't want you neglecting them to take that picture. But if there's someone else there who can snap that picture or that video and you can go grab your child, it's a good way to demonstrate how this little one can put themselves at risk. Okay, so oftentimes one of the main questions asked is, how do I know what's fair? How many hours should my child be receiving? And that's something we can't answer you because we don't live in your home. I don't know how it is to support your child, right? And even they won't know because they're going to come and be there maybe 20, 30, 40 minutes, an hour. So that's why all this information is really helpful. What Disability Rights of California did is developed a document. We call it the self-assessment tool. And this document will help you understand how much time is spent on the services you provide for the applicant and help you justify your needs during that evaluation, or if you're appealing a decision. You can also use this document during your in-home interview with the social worker to remember what the applicant's needs are, why the applicant needs those hours, and to remind you what services you're applying for. Because when we're talking about our own kid, it can be pretty emotional and intimidating. And if we get someone who comes in with maybe a strong personality, that might make us even more scared. So this will help. This document, if we fill it out, will just really help prepare us. Okay. When you're filling out this document, we ask you to read these other two documents. One of them is going to talk about all of the services. So what does preparing meal look like? What does helping someone with their feeding time looks like? What does it look like when you're helping somebody dress? And it kind of gives you an idea in terms of what they're looking at when you're supporting someone. So that self-assessment tool should be filled out by you, and we ask you to time yourself. You can use a smartphone, a manual timer, a clock, or a watch to track each task and fill out that table that we're going to see in a minute. And I really do encourage you to not estimate. Oftentimes when parents estimate how long they're taking, they're actually cheating themselves because we're so conditioned and used to doing stuff that we really don't think of everything we're doing for that individual. But if you time yourself, I can guarantee you're going to be shocked at how much time you invest into your loved one. The other thing is you'll feel more confident. If they question you, you're going to know, well, if they think it takes me too long to feed, I'm sorry, but that's how long it takes. But you'll also have your notes to be able to say, it takes me this long to feed my daughter or my son because their oral chewing abilities are not fully developed right now, or because they have sensory issues, or they have behaviors, or their attention span's only like 5 minutes. There's constant redirection going on. So this tool is going to have your notes on there that will allow you to also, answer any questions they may have at the minute. Let's see. And for example, many toddlers and younger children might have difficulty eating, not because they're picky eaters. People love to call our loved ones who have disabilities that they're just picky eaters. And oftentimes that's not the case. It really is due to their diagnosis, to their medical needs, to their disability. They might have oral motor issues going on or sensory problems due to the diagnosis. So we want to bring that social worker back to nope, it's not that he's picky, it's that this child really has sensory issues. And so if you think of a 3-year-old with sensory and one that doesn't, this one that doesn't have sensory issues might eventually, if you bribe them or reward them, try that food you're trying to entice them to eat. The one with special needs is probably not going to do it. They're probably going to gag. They might, have a meltdown. It might just not work. They're going to physically get sick. And so you won't be able to force them or have them try that meal. It's going to be very rigid or stuck to whatever they want to eat. This is the document we're talking about, the self-assessment worksheet. And if you see, it has explanations. So the very beginning is talking about domestic services. It's for people who are 18 and over. What they usually do is they give 6 hours per month. And then they prorate that by about how many people are in the home. And so, I would write notes on there saying why this individual can't help. It might be because they physically can't. It might be because cognitively they can't. It might be that they have a poor memory. It might be a safety issue in terms of why they're not helping with their, domestic services. And in some cases, when let's just say, the amount of hours they give you is not enough divided by the people in the home, you can definitely bring that up. In my home, it's not enough. John requires a lot of domestic service support because of his diagnosis, and it's written in a lot of his medical documents. So I'm able to justify it. So they were able to up those hours for him. And once again, it continues. Now, if your kid is under 18 and this is something you can't apply for yet, to avoid confusion, I say just cross out whatever you're not going to be using for your loved one. We're going to move into related services. And I really, this is an important topic because oftentimes when the social workers come to the home, they automatically tell parents who have minors, this is a parental responsibility. So you're not eligible to receive support in this area. If your child if your child is under 18 and eats whatever you cooked for the family, then yes, there is no extra need because you're not going above and beyond what another family would be doing. But let's just say you're following a gluten-free diet or a diet that the doctor recommended due to allergies, due to medical ailments, due to the way they can't swallow certain things or the way they chew, then you might see yourself preparing meals differently. Due to sensory is another reason why some parents find themselves preparing separate meals. So if that's your case, then you want to make sure you let them know that so that they're aware that that's not the case in your home. You are preparing separately. And if you're preparing separately, you're obviously cleaning up separately, right? And if you notice, it's BLD, which stands for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So they're kind of telling you how much time are you taking. This self-assessment tool does give you instructions on how to time yourself and how to add it all up. I'm not a math person. It confused me. But I've noticed the parents who just do their time and just add up the minutes, it's the same thing. The IHSS social workers still take that into consideration. The other one is laundry, mending, ironing. So anything that has to do with laundry, they usually give you 60 minutes per week in the home and 90 minutes per week it's out of the home. Once again, very similar to prepping meals as well as other shopping errands. If they're under 18, they're going to say parental responsibility. And we got to let them know what's going on. Why can't I wait till the end of the week to do my laundry? In comparison to a typical family? Well, your kid might have digestive issues and there might be soiled clothing. There might be clothing that they drool on or they vomit frequently. And so these families might be having to do more laundry than the typical family. And so they can't wait. There might be potty accidents going on. This family's not going to wait to wash those sheets and that linen and that clothing till the end of the week, right? They're going to have to do it right away. The shopping errands, the only thing I've seen when they're minors, awarded on here is for like medications that parents have to pick up. If they're medications that are prescribed and there's a lot of them, then I've seen it sometimes on it. Now, for over 18-year-olds, it's a little bit different. preparing meal, once again, if your loved one is over 18, if they eat whatever you cooked and you guys all eat at the same time, you're not having to prep meals, while they're, on your own, because on your own time, because they need it. Let's just say you all eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner together, and they eat that, then they're going to prorate it by the amount of people that live in the home. But let's just say, once again, that loved one has a special diet, or they have a special schedule that requires for you to cook those meals at a different time for them. Then in that instance, you want to let them know so you can get the full amount and not a prorated amount. Okay. Laundry, same thing. If you're having to do laundry separately, please let them know why. So they're not prorating those hours. Okay. And for other shopping and errands, you also want to let them know if you go to special stores, special places to pick up prescriptions, or to do their hygiene shopping, or to shop for specific food, then you want to let them know that it's additional to what you already do, so that you get the full amount and not a prorated amount. All right, that's the same thing as the other one. It just flowed over. We're going to continue. And right now it's non-medical personal services. The very first one is heavy cleaning. And that one still doesn't fall under non-medical personal services, but I've never seen anyone get heavy cleaning. That's why I encourage you to read up on it in this handbook. Like I said, there's hyperlinks that are going to allow you to read about all this information. But what I was explained was heavy cleaning was for people who live on their own and they're adults, and they might have regressed on some of their life skills, and now they need someone to come in and do some heavy cleaning. That's what I was explained. But moving on to non-medical personal services. So respiration, I've seen them give here, like if your kid's has asthma treatments, maybe they have a nebulizer or they have a breathing machine. I've seen it here, but I've also seen it on paramedical. So you want to see where, I would probably go with paramedical if that's the choice, because your doctor has the option of saying how much time and what they need to give you for that. When you go through respiration, then they kind of tell you what they're going to give you. Bowel and bladder care is obviously helping someone go to the restroom. And I'm not going to go through all of these, because this is usually what takes like a whole hour for me, because we talk about, examples. But I do want to let you know, supporting someone can look at for someone in many different ways. It could be supporting someone physically. It could be redirecting someone. It could be prompting. It could be just supervising, and it could be a combination of all of those. So I usually tell parents, if you don't even know when your kid's finished eating, if you don't even know when your kid used the restroom, then obviously you don't need the service. They shouldn't have to pay you for it, because your kid's doing it on their own. But if there's a reason why you're sticking around while they're eating, if there's a reason why you're still feeding them, if there's a reason why they need support with bowel and bladder, then you need to address those and note why. Why are you supporting? What does that look like? And right now with COVID, you guys are all having to deal with the kids 24 hours. So it's a lot more obvious for you in terms of what types of support they need, how much redirection they require, how much time invested. So it's actually going to be a little more helpful for you to be able to fill this out. Feeding, we talked about that one. Bed baths is obviously for someone who's not ambulatory, but even in some cases, like for my son's not ambulatory, but he, we shower him in the bathroom, and then sometimes we just showered him and then he had an accident, and it's just too much work to shower him again. So we'll go ahead and do a bed bath. So and so we get it in both. So there is a chance you could get both services. Okay. They offer dressing. Once again, if you do not even know what your child's wearing, you just say, hey, get ready because we're leaving in 5 minutes, then you don't need that support for them. But if there's any level of support, like that person may be able to dress themselves, but cannot button, cannot tie, cannot zip because of their fine motor skills, then you want to address that. If you're the one picking that, the clothing for them because they maybe lack the cognitive ability to pick what's appropriate, what goes with what's climate appropriate, what's event appropriate, what's age appropriate, then you definitely want to bring that up, because you're still taking the time to support this individual to dress themselves. Okay. And obviously that all comes with the age. think about what age your child is at and what level of supports a child typical that age would need, and what's the difference in your home. The next one is menstrual care. So I think that's self-explanatory. What level of care does that young lady need from you? Do you need to schedule? You need to, physically help them, or you just need reminders? Are you the one carrying stuff for them? Keep in consideration during that time period, do you do more linen? Do you do more washing of the clothing? Is there more bathing going on during that time? So these are things that you want to think about, because it does change the dynamics of the usual services you're providing for your loved one. Ambulation is for someone who maybe there's stairs in your house and they can't walk up and down those stairs safely. So you want to help them with that, just to prevent them from hurting themselves. They're able to walk, but they need that extra support to maneuver themselves in your home. And you can use, like I said, examples from other environments to let them know that it also happens in other places. For example, some parents will say, I have to hold their hand while we're walking outside in the street because they'll trip over any little extra ledge that's lifted, or on the sidewalks, they won't pay attention. Moving into and out of bed is for someone who's very physically challenged. But I did have a case where a young lady just cognitively needed to be told when it was time to go to bed and when it was time to get out of bed. If not, she would not go to bed, or she wouldn't get out. So we do have some individuals that cognitively need that extra prompting and reminding to be able to do that. And then letter D is grooming, bathing, hair care, teeth and fingernails, and they left a lot of them out. So letter D is more for hygiene. And so, depending on the age your loved one is at, you're going to go, oh, wow, there's a lot of stuff missing there. As they get older, who's the one telling them to put deodorant on? Who's the one helping them shave? Cut their hair? A lot of us become, the hairdressers to avoid, any stress on them. So think about all of those things. Think about the age and how it looks like when comparing it to someone that age. Do they need a lot of support? Do they need a little bit? And what that looks like and how long it takes you. So the letter D, I would actually take a separate sheet of paper and just add all those services separately, because some of these you might do regularly on a daily basis, more than once. And some of these you might do, every other week or every 2 weeks. The next one is rubbing skin to aid circulation, turning in bed, repositioning in the wheelchair, helping in and out of vehicles. So that's someone who needs a little bit more physical support. But I have seen on here that people can get hours like when they have like skin issues like rosacea or eczema, and they need someone to go ahead. And I've also even seen when the doctor orders, massage the skin or massage the body to do that circulation. This is where I've seen that. Care and help with prostheses. So this is, I would make a list of all the equipment your kids have, think about anything that you have. If there's a bath chair, a wheelchair, if there's, a communication device, glasses that they may wear, they have, cochlear implants or hearing aids, all the things your loved one might need, inserts in their shoes. Who's the one who cleans them? Who's the one who makes sure they're wearing them? Any hand splints, braces, walkers. Who's the one who's sanitizing, like those machines for the, asthma, the nebulizers? Somebody has to be in charge of cleaning. Someone has to be in charge of using them, putting them on or off of our client. And so you want to make a list of all of the equipment, but also on here, you can also make the list of those medications again. Now, because here is administering, it's not picking them up. It's how, if your loved one cannot administer medications on their own, then you want to list all those medications. And for under 18, I'm talking about prescribed or recommended, like supplements that maybe have been prescribed by the doctor or recommended by the doctor, then you want to list them there. But if they're over 18, you obviously, if you're the one in charge of even looking at like the Advil and the ibuprofen, then you want to make sure you list everything. So now we're going to talk about medical transportation. So once again, if your kid is under 18, if they're very healthy and they don't really go to the doctors, then you really cannot justify this service. But if your kids see specialists, if they see like an orthopedic, if they see a cardiologist, if they see a neurologist, make a list of all the doctors your kid sees, or maybe you're driving them to therapy appointments to see the OT, the PT, the speech therapist. If you're driving them to it, then this is where you want to list that. Any medical appointments, any psychological appointments, all of those go on here. Okay. And to alternative resources would be things maybe when they're under 18, like social skills, maybe if the doctor told you they needed swimming to help their range of motion, or maybe horseback riding to help with their, strengthening their core. This is where you would add that. For over 18, it would be anywhere that they would take themselves to. So what other alternative resources would they go to? All those other appointments that are not medically related, but that they have to attend to. Okay. Yard hazard abatement is very similar to heavy cleaning. I've never seen anyone get that, but I was told this is more for adult clients who apply and maybe there's stuff in the yard they can't clean up themselves. They'll have somebody go in and clean that, whatever it is. If it's toxic or they're allergic to it, they have someone that can come and clean it. And then we're going to get to the really good one, protective supervision and paramedical. So what is protective supervision? So protective supervision requires a provider to watch the applicant's behavior and to intervene if the applicant is at risk of injury, hazard, or accident. Protective supervision is only for applicants who are non-self-directing, confused, mentally impaired, or mentally ill, and who require 24-hour day supervision to stay safely in their home. Both children and adults are eligible for this service, and a licensed healthcare professional must complete and sign a form before the county social worker can approve this service. Now, just because the doctor signs this form doesn't mean your kid is automatically eligible. So that's why it's still important to build this case. Okay. And just so you know, for those parents that are saying, oh, it's a lot of work to do this, it is in the beginning. And you definitely do have to do your homework, but it's like applying for anything. But it's just the beginning. Once you're in the IHSS system, it gets easier. They come to your home once a year. And it's, it's just in the beginning that you really have to demonstrate all the needs. So this is what that form looks like for protective supervision that we just talked about. And I just want to let you know that all the forms that the county shares with you have an ID lettering down at the bottom. Well, it would be, I guess, if you're looking at it, facing it, it would be your left-hand side. And if you see, it's form SOC 821. So if you ever need anybody to help you read a form, or you want to look it up and print it yourself, all you have to do is Google SOC 821 and it'll take you directly to this form. Okay. The county has all these forms on their website. But if you see, what they're asking the doctor to fill out for protective supervision is how the person's memory is impacted, their orientation, and their judgment. And they want to know if there's no problem, if it's moderate, or if it's severe. We obviously want the doctor to stick between these two. And it would be very beneficial for the doctor to explain something. So if you can make an appointment on the day that the doctor's filling that out to be there and to explain to them why you're doing this, it would probably benefit you better. Okay. Or send them an email letting them know. Because I know our doctors don't always see our kids and they might not have a really good history about, what you're talking about. So it's probably better. And moving forward, I would encourage you to have the doctor note all the challenges and everything that's going on. I would also suggest that once the doctor fills it out, you ask for them to keep a copy in their archives, because what happened to me was once my son went from pediatrics to the adult, his adult doctor had never filled a form out. And we're talking about a different form, but it made me realize if they would have kept it in his chart, he could have just looked to see what the other doctor had filled out. So I had to look through all my paperwork, and luckily I had found it and just updated it. But it's so beneficial to have them look it in, put it in their file, so that if you need another doctor to look at it, it's right there and it tells them what the original doctor filled out on it. So we're talking about memory. When you talk about memory, think about your kid's memory. and the age they're at. They remember their birthday? Do they remember their name, the parent's name? Do they, remember what happened yesterday? What's, the name of the school they go to? All those things are very important, especially at a certain age. Orientation, do they know where they live, what, where their school's located, what city, what country, what day and time it is? Those are also really important things to think about. And then judgment. Are they somebody who knows about safety, awareness? Are they do they know about stranger danger? Are they socially appropriate? Do they know, do they know that you don't just hug anybody, that, you, especially right now with COVID, you don't want people, getting too close to your loved ones. And do they know about that body spatial boundary? Do they know that a girlfriend and a friend is two whole different things? All these are the things you want to think about when judgment. Do they know that money buys stuff? Do they know that they cannot open the door to just strangers? How do that the stove can burn them if they leave the gas open? That's very dangerous. That you can't just put stuff in the microwave and press any numbers, right? Or that if you go into the shower, do they know how to regulate the hot and the cold water? Those are all really important things. So mainly think about things that put them at risk at home. But this is where all the other documents come into play, because if your kid has a one-to-one at school, if there's a behavior plan, if there's speech loss, then we're going to think about how dangerous is this if this kid has poor memory, poor orientation, poor judgment, and their speech delayed. That's huge if this kid gets lost or if this kid elopes, right? So the other things to consider is self-injuries behaviors. A lot of kids have that when they're overwhelmed, when they have sensory issues or challenges. They might injure themselves by throwing themselves on the floor, flapping their hands together really hard. Some of them do actually hurt themselves by slapping themselves or, but just think about your situation at home with your child and consider that. So this is that document. Now, if you are going to apply for protective supervision, hold off on printing this, or print it, but hold off on getting the doctor to fill it out. I'm going to tell you when is the right time to get it filled out. All right. Now we're going to talk about paramedical services. Oh, but one thing I left out. Let me go back to protective supervision. So protective supervision, there's a minimum of 195 or 283. And so if you qualify for IHSS and protective supervision, you get a combination of either the minimum, which is 195 or a little bit more, anything in between, or the max, which is the 283. How that is concluded is based on how many hours you get on the services that have the asterisk. So if you get 80 hours or less of services that have the asterisk, and you also get protective supervision, so if it's 80 or less, you get the minimum, okay, of 195 or 2 something, depending on what hours you get right here. But if you get anything over 80 hours, 80 or more hours of the asterisk, then you get the max, which throws you to the 283 automatically. Okay, so I have a feeling that's why sometimes it's not, very generous out there for our families, because it gives them a minimum and a max. Paramedical is another service that you would also have to formally request. They don't normally come to your home and talk to you about protective supervision or paramedical. So, with paramedical, they are, services that are health related, like the administration of medication that is out of the norm, like puncturing the skin or wound care, activities requiring sterile procedures, like maybe kids who have G tubes, J tubes, who have, who need injections, who need, suppositories, things like that. That a licensed healthcare professional must determine what specific paramedical tasks an applicant needs and the amount of time it takes to perform that task. A licensed healthcare professional must complete and sign a form before the county social worker can approve that service. Okay, and so this is what that form looks like. And you will hand it to your doctor. They'll fill out the type of service right here, the time required, the frequency, and how long the service is to be provided. And so this is that area where I told you if your kid has the, the nebulizer because they have asthma, or maybe a CPAP machine for breathing at night, or maybe they have an oxygen machine, even range of motion services, all of those might fall into there. Embedded into this PowerPoint is a list of all of those paramedical services, so you can read more upon it. But this one also, if it's something that your family is requiring, you want to hold off, print it, but hold off and submit it when I tell you in a little bit. Now, the next thing we're encouraging parents is to get organized. So that's going to help you tons. It will save you time and help you apply more successfully. And it'll just keep everything out. It'll be less stress for you to know everything's in one place. Okay. This is just tips on some of the things some of our families do to get organized. We really encourage you. A lot of you probably already do that if your kids have an IEP. We also encourage you to buy an agenda, keep notes, especially now that you know what you're going to be looking at. What are the things that you want to keep in mind as you move forward with this application process? The other important thing to note on here is when you applied, because this is a system or a service that if they take 3-4 months to approve you, they have to retroactively pay you to the day you apply. Okay. And this is just, like I said, an idea of what that might look like in terms of taking notes. You can buy an agenda, a calendar, a journal, whatever it is. So you're ready to apply now. What do? I always encourage parents to just apply by calling. It's just easier right now, especially with COVID. The questions are so much more less than if you fill out that application form. They might have you on hold for a bit, but we have cell phones. We can still walk around and do chores if we have to. On that day, these are some of the things that they normally request. Okay. Be sure to write down who took that call, maybe a case number if they have one already, and the date that you took that, because this opens up your application. You can also apply via mail or in person, although right now you want to ask if they're even open because of COVID. And we gave you links to see the map of locations. We gave you links to find that application. But this is the reason I tell parents, just call. The application is 8 pages. So it definitely asks for way more questions than when you just make that really quick phone call. Okay, it's just more friendlier. I've never had anybody complain about it. All right. Remember that if you're requesting those special services like paramedical or protective supervision, you want to print those forms out and you want to ask your doctor to fill them out when they send you a form to fill out. And I'll tell you right now. So after you make that phone call and you apply, the county must process a completed application within 30 days. Eligibility determination must be done, the needs assessment, which is like a ranking score that they do, and send you a notice of action, which is also the NOA. In order to evaluate the applicant's needs for IHSS, a county social worker will conduct a home visit. And right now that might look different because of COVID. It might be them doing it through FaceTime or Zoom, or maybe coming but doing social distancing. The county social worker will call or mail you to inform you of that interview date. Please try not to reschedule it. Also, please be very considerate with them. If you live in a gated community, if there's no parking, if you have, pets, please let them know all of these things in advance. You should also receive the health certification form through the mail, which will require the applicant's healthcare provider to fill out. This document is time sensitive and must be returned within 45 days to them. This is when I recommend you have the doctor fill out all your forms. The reason is because they're all going to coincide with the same date. So they can't tell you, oh, these other forms are too old, because they have the same date that they're filled out by this form, right? And so you want to make copies and submit to them. If you don't have a copier, you can take a picture of it through your phone and archive it somewhere so you have a copy of it. This is what that health certification form looks like. You must fill it out within the time frame they told you. If not, you can ask for an extension right now due to COVID, but you need to make sure somebody authorizes that. Okay, because if this is not filled out in a timely manner, they're going to close the case and you're going to have to start all over. So this is just a doctor saying, yes, you should continue with the assessment for this individual. And this is right here will show you the date by when this should be submitted back to them. It might be filled out a little bit, but the thing the doctor's going to have to fill out is this. And you have to make sure the doctor checks off yes, yes, and yes. We've seen doctors mess up and do it so quickly that they accidentally check off a no. So make sure that your doctor's aware that they all need to say yes for this assessment to continue. And of course, if they want to fill out more specific information, that's always super helpful. All right. So what do you expect at that home visit once they're telling you they're going to come? So the applicant's going to have to be present. So if your loved one is articulate and they love to think they're way more independent than what they are, and you really cheer them on, because we like to do that as parents, you need to let them know that on this day, someone's going to come and talk about all the things you guys help them with, so they're not caught off guard, okay? Because they might be interviewed on that day, and we don't want no contradictions going on. At the home visit, the county social worker will assess the applicant's mental and physical conditions, what they can and cannot do for themselves, how long it takes to complete tasks, and their living situation. They will decide what services are needed and the time necessary to perform those services by observing, asking you questions, asking the applicant question, and using information that you provided to them. Now, if they don't want that information you worked so hard on that I recommended, don't worry about it. Most likely you're going to use it anyway, so you didn't do it in vain. You're going to use that information, okay? Now, that assessment we're talking about is called the ranking assessment tool. And it's a 5-point ranking scale that they use. And you are able to ask them for a copy of it to see where they ranked your child, 1 being someone who needs no help at all, to 5 being someone who needs a lot of help. Helpful tips. Your job is to help the social worker understand and justify all of those needs, right? That's why we're putting all our stuff together. And so this is just going over what we talked about earlier, okay? How the self-assessment tool is going to help you answer a lot of those questions during the home assessment. It'll also remind you what services you really want to ask for, because remember, they're going to come and they're not going to have the time to explain to you how I am and to be very specific. So it's your job to know all this information and be able to advocate for yourself. Have copy of all those documents that you want to share with them or that they asked you for. Have a list of all the medications they're going to probably want to see, and make sure you know what they're for and when they're how often you give it to the individual. And if you're told verbally the applicant is not eligible for specific services or for any services, you want to make sure you let them know that they need to include that in the assessment, and you need it in writing through a notice of action, okay? A form of denial. And notice of action, which is the NOA. So the county must send you that notice of action through mail, explaining the eligibility determination. If you're found eligible for IHSS, the NOA will include the case number, the new worker's number. Sometimes the social worker changes, it often does. The date the services came into effect, so that should jive with the day you applied, and the hours of per month you were awarded, the type of services the client was awarded for, or any codes on services they might have denied. And after this, you'll be assessed every year, and that gets easier. They come really quickly to your home. They just want to make sure things didn't change. They have you sign off on forms. They might have you update some of those forms like the paramedical or protective, and that's why it's important to keep copies so we know what was filled out the prior year. This is what that notice of action looks like. Okay, it's a legal size form. It comes with additional pages. It does tell you the steps on how to apply as well. And it has different codes as well. But it'll tell you how much time they gave you for the different services. Okay, and that's how you'll know what they gave you, how much time, if you're happy with that, and if you're not. Okay. So recipients or the person receiving the IHSS services may hire anyone who meets that enrollment requirement. And once again, you know, it can be a family member, a friend, or someone from the registry. The IHSS recipient or his or her authorized representative is responsible for hiring, training, supervising, and if necessary, letting go of those individuals if it's not the provider. And for some of us who have kids who are not conserved and they're adults, they can actually fire us if we're their provider. They have the right to do that, okay? And I've had some clients say they don't want their parents anymore because of the diet or the, you know, the rules that the parent is putting on them. The pay rate right now, I believe it's still $14, but it might change. And if you're assigned more than 40 hours per week, you should be receiving overtime. If you get more than, I believe, 74 hours per month, you also qualify for health benefits, okay? And if you want additional benefits like dental or vision, then you have to be part of the union, and that's personal choice. An IHSS provider must be eligible to work in the US. Two things to consider. If the recipient is under the age of 18 and the parent works full-time, you will need to hire someone else to provide that IHSS service, okay? If the recipient is over the age of 18, the parent can work full-time and be the provider, and you can have more than one provider for that adult client. So those are things to keep in mind. If you are found not eligible for IHSS, it will probably just include this information right here. And it'll probably be less information. It'll probably look like this and then just have a code in terms of telling you why you didn't qualify. And upon receipt of the notice of action, you have 90 days to apply for an appeal. You can appeal if you do not agree with the amount of services approved, if you do not agree with the type of services approved, or if you were denied IHSS services. Why is appealing important? Because it allows you to receive retroactive pay if you're awarded more hours. Is it a pain in the butt to appeal? Yes, it is. It's work, you know, but is it worth it? Absolutely. I had 4 families not too long ago that we just closed their cases. Some of them took longer than others, but they all got over $10,000 on retroactive pay. If they would have not appealed, they would have lost the chance to demonstrate that the need is there and get the money that is owed to their child, you know, for those services. The notice of action does have a page that tells you how to appeal. It looks like this. And you have many methods of appealing, but right now they prefer for you to call or to email the appeal. But it's very simple. To open up the appeal is simple. You just need to say what you didn't agree with, okay? I didn't agree with the hours. I didn't agree that they didn't give my son protective supervision. I didn't agree with some of the services. You can call the State Hearings Division to request a fair hearing. Or you can mail the notice of action that I just showed you filled out to the address that's on the notice of action, or you can fax it and get a confirmation, make sure that, you know, the number's current and that it's working, or you can request a fair hearing online. These are some more resources that we have available for you so you can, you know, really get to know. Remember, I told you there's a list of all the different paramedical services. They're all right here. The self-assessment worksheet you can download. And just so you know, all the information that's on this PowerPoint, I gathered through Department of Social Services, through experiences of families we've supported, and also through Disability Rights of California that has always been so helpful in supporting our families. But these are just really good resources for you to look at whenever you have a minute. There's also videos that we thought might be helpful for you to look at. And then here are some of the common phone numbers, like for Disability of Rights, Justice and Agent, that also helps, you know, adults with IHSS, the IHSS information and referral line. Our own Clients' Rights Office number, but every regional center has an Office of Clients' Rights, and that's an attorney from Disability Rights of California assigned to every regional center to provide legal support or information. Very helpful. I usually refer my families when I don't know the answer to what they're looking for. Personal Assistance Service Council, that's the registry, and what they do is they also provide support to all of our IHSS providers in terms of filling out timesheets, helping them even advocate for more hours for our adult clients. And just whenever anything changes, they're up to date with that. They also sometimes, if you were having a hard time connecting with your worker, they can also sometimes help you. And the local union, like I said, that's a personal choice, but they have a lot of information available, and they do a lot of things for our families as well. And then my information's on this PowerPoint as well, that you can ask me direct questions to, because I did rush through this PowerPoint. I left out a lot of info, and I know you guys must have lots of questions.
Are there circumstances in which a recipient is eligible for additional hours? Is that even, is that a question you get all the time that's worth recording and having included? I think I'm thinking especially for families who might have more than one child, and knowing that there's exceptions that can be made for the parent to have exceeded their maximum hours.
Yes, so if you have more than one child, you can definitely apply, or for them, but there is a limit, and they're gonna have to give you an exemption. I believe when you're the parent, you can bill up to 90 hours a week. After that, you would have to hire someone else to come in and do the difference. If it's not the parent, if it's just a provider for IHSS, I believe they can be allowed to work up to 66 hours for various clients. Okay. But that's something you definitely want to talk to your social worker about, because they have to allow you to do that.
I had a question. What are your thoughts on additional hours, specifically because of COVID? Because the kids aren't out of the house for school, and usually they deduct those hours, like you can't count those hours in.
Right.
And so for now and for a long time, for a lot of families, they're going to have all, like, it's literally 24/7.
So if you're already getting IHSS, what you want to do is you want to go to your notice of action and look to see where it says alternative resources, or there's a line that says like voluntary support. That's where they take away. So they tell you how much your child or the loved one is going to get, and then they say minus. And that means somebody else is providing. Usually when kids are in school or a day program, that's what they're doing. They're taking away hours because they're saying someone else is providing it. It's usually not a lot of hours. Okay. Those are definitely hours you definitely can talk to them about regaining right now, because they're at home the whole time. But I really recommend, if there was ever a time for a reassessment of hours, now would be the time, because now's the time as a parent that you really know what it's like to care for this loved one. I mean, with my own son, honestly, I think he needs a one-to-one when he's at the day program, because while he's in a Zoom meeting, he requires so much constant redirection and prompting to stay on task. And I didn't know that until now that I'm his, one of the people who help him sometimes. So those are things that you're getting to see with your kid. How attentive is he? What's his attention span like? How often does he eat? And what does potty time look like? Like right now is a perfect time for parents to really see how much time is invested into these little ones, or adults. And so if there was ever a time for you to ask for a reassessment of hours, now's the time to do that. In terms of for COVID, those were the only ones that Disability Rights of California told us that, they should look at and consider. And, Regional Center is also another agency that you want to talk about to give additional support right now, so that you have supplements coming from different places.
Well, so with the older kids who, like middle schooler, they can do all their Zooms and all their schooling on their own. But like my middle schooler, I have to sit next to him all day at school and help him and redirect and all of that. So is that, and I mean, that's schooling, that's critical. It's,
Right.
you can't not do it. So are they talking about, or have they considered that as something that has
I
to be done,
haven't.
especially long term for.
I haven't seen any talk about that yet, and probably the best people to ask that to would be Disability Rights of California. Now, because they've never really supported us to support our kids academically,
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's a criteria for that, right? Like teaching and demonstrating, I didn't even talk about it because they never give that. Teaching and demonstrating is not to help someone, it's to help someone who like maybe broke their arm and now they need to regain that skill, and it's a 3-month course that you're going to be doing this additional support. But we're talking about more like how much more life skills we're going to have to focus on, the services that they provide in order to up those hours. For supporting someone, that's probably regional centers probably going to be your best bet, because that's where that extra personal assistance, especially if they're adults, the personal assistance person can provide, or the life support person can provide that, or living support person. Those are the people that might come in and add those temporarily until you figure out with IHSS what are the hours that you need to look at in terms of raising. I can guarantee you, if you look at your notice of action and you have not got the max, there's probably services that you haven't even looked at that you think, oh my goodness. I mean, sometimes I see like 3 hours for dressing and if you divide that into 7 days, that's not even an hour a day to help someone dress. And if you take into consideration, is that how long it takes you to dress? I mean, we're talking about helping someone pick their outfit, helping them put it on, helping them zip it. I mean, and typically, how many times do we change a day? And how many times does that person change where you're having to support them with that task? And that's just an example, but that could be the same example for feeding someone, And so look at how much they're giving you. And if there's room for you to say, wait a minute, I have this self-assessment tool now, I'm going to time myself. And if it's way off, you definitely want to ask for reassessment. Reassessment is requested when you've gone over your 90 days of appeal. So if you've gone over those 90 days and have not appealed that notice of action, then you can ask for a reassessment. Every year when you get that notice of action, you have 90 days to appeal that decision. If you don't do it, then it's like an IEP. You can ask, let's meet again, things change. Can we have a reassessment of hours? These are the areas I would really like for you to consider. Now, with that said, if you do have protective supervision, in order to change the amount of hours would have to be changing the amount of like the 80 hours. Because if not, what they're going to do is they're just going to move them around and keep you kind of at the same amount you're at, right? So it's important to look at how many hours you're getting for the services and how many of them are for protective supervision. For those parents who are close to 80 hours in those related services with the asterisk, it's probably beneficial for you to try to go over the 80 to get the max. But if let's just say you're getting only 20 hours and the rest is going towards protective supervision, you're going to have to demonstrate where those other 60 hours are going to come into play so you can get a change in hours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much.
I have spoken with several families who work. And so they have been denied. They are full-time workers and they've been denied IHSS. But when that child comes home from school, from all of that, and when they get home, there's all kinds of work stuff that they have to do.
Right.
So do you know any way around that, or is there language around that?
So they shouldn't be denied. They should be authorized.
Underneath, even on that the PowerPoint, it said if you're a working parent.
So if you're a working parent, if your child qualifies, they'll qualify. But if you work full-time, you will not be the provider. So the hours will be there for someone else to bill. It just can't be the provider. So essentially,
even when you get home, there's tons of stuff.
If they're working full-time right now, they can't. Yeah, I believe if it's full-time. And just so you know, full-time is anything over 40 hours. So if you have parents working 36 hours, that's considered part-time. So it might be for some parents just adjusting their schedule just a little bit. I mean, for myself, for a while, I I didn't want to lose my benefits, so I was part-time. That meant I had to work 30 something hours per week. And I know that's a lot of the parents, real, concern is losing those benefits if you're not full-time. But to be full-time, you could be a little over the 30, which would allow you to be the provider, but also continue with your benefits at work. Or you could hire someone. You could hire another parent. You could hire a friend, a relative that's willing to come in and do those hours. Even if you have like respite providers from the regional center, they might be comfortable doing those IHSS hours as well if they have extra allotted time to do the work for the client.